بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هذه lecture 11 for Nanochemistry 1. ستكون هذه المحاضرة هي تكملة لل applications of the nanomaterials which we already started in previous lecture. ولكن ال application هنا سيتم تناولها in yet more details. Some more details, and according to the types of application, the following sectors can be described as below. Number 1, electronics, displays. displays هي شاشات العرض. طبعا بصورة عامة شاشات العرض معروف انه كل ما تقل البيكسل لها كل ما يزيد الريزوليوشن لها، يعني الدقة تكون بها أعلى. وجد في حال استخدام nanomaterials for example nanocrystalline، مو فقط الريزوليوشن صارت أعلى وإنما حتى البرايتنس، يعني السطوع، الكونتراست، الكوست لها صار، يعني السطوع والتباين وحتى الكلفة صارت أقل. وطبعا هذا هو نتيجة لامتلاك النانو كريستالاينز والنانو ماتيريالز لصفات الالكتريكال واوبتيكال بروبرتيز تختلف عما لو كانت بالبالك فورم. وأيضا وجد في حالة استخدام for example الكربون نانو تيوبز، فبالإضافة لهذه الصفات اللي ذكرناها تم استغلال صفة إنه السترينث of the carbon nanotubes والsmall radius of the carbon nanotubes، وصارت تستخدم يعني carbon nanotubes بالكولديمتر باللو فولتج، فصارت تتجنب الدرجات في حالة يعني استخدام carbon nanotubes صار بالإمكان تجنب الدرجات الحرارة العالية والهاي فولتج. So the resolution of television monitor, this is in general speaking, the resolution of a television monitor improves with the reduction of the pixel size. The use of nanocrystalline materials can greatly enhance the resolution and may significantly reduce the cost. Also, flat panel displays constructed with nanomaterials may possess much higher brightness and contrast than the conventional displays, owing to the enhanced electrical and optical properties of the new materials. Carbon nanotubes are being investigated for low voltage field emission displays. Their combination of the mechanical and electrical properties makes them potentially very attractive for the long life emitters. Thin carbon nanotubes have ideal geometry for the electron emission due to their smallest atomistic tip radius that results in turn to a high electrical field strength at the order of the magnitude greater than the work function of the electrons. Moreover, carbon nanotubes are known to exhibit high strength, melting temperature, resistance to aggressive media as graphite, and are able to work in a technical vacuum. Coordinator and base of the carbon nanotubes are proposed to be a key element for the future flat panel TV setup, as being the alternative for hot emitters on base of electron beam tubes that make it possible to avoid high dangerous asseverated 20 to 30 kilovolt voltages. At ambient temperature, carbon nanotubes are able to emit electrons and current of the same density as the standard tungsten cathode operating at high temperatures and voltages. Setup of light panel displays on base of carbon nanotubes fixed at cathode and oriented at the anode direction. إذن هذه الصورة لل TM images of the carbon nanotubes. هذه الكربون nanotubes وهذه هو التيوبز اللي يستخدم في شاشات العرض. for example هنا nanotubes cathode نشوف باتجاه الأورينتيشن مالته باتجاه الأنود. فهذه فقط هو رسم توضيحي يبين استخدام النانوتيوبز في الإيميترز لشاشات العرض. For microelectronics, obviously for microelectronics استخدام النانوماتيريالز أدى إلى إنه حجم الترانزستورز يقل يختزل، وأيضا أدى إلى أن تكون البروسيسور تعمل بسرعة أعلى. بالنسبة للداتا ستورج أدى طبعا استخدام النانو ماتيريالز إلى إن تكون سعة الخزن أعلى. For high energy density batteries obviously زي استخدام النانو materials أدى إلى زيادة capacity for batteries lifetime recharging and so on. So for microelectronics, many of the current microelectronics applications are already at the nanoscale level. During the last 4 decades, the smallest feature of the transistor shrank from 10 micrometer down to 30 nanometer. The ultimate objective of the microelectronics fabrications is to make electronic circuits elements that are at the nanoscopic level. By achieving a significant reduction in the size of the circuit elements, the microprocessors, or better said nanoprocessors, that are contained these components could run faster and incorporate more logic gates, thereby enabling computations at a far higher speeds. Relatively, carbon nanotubes are exciting alternative to conventional dot semiconductor crystals due to their varied electronic properties ranging from metallic to semiconducting and to superconducting properties. For data storage, devices such as computer hard disk function based on their ability to magnetize small area of a spinning disk to record information are established as nano applications. Disks and tapes contained engineered nanoparticles can store larger amounts of information. Future avenues for magnetic recording that will radically increase the capacity of data storage include spintronics or spin electronics and nanowires. High energy density batteries, new nanomaterials show promising properties as anode and cathode materials in lithium-ion batteries, having higher capacity and better cycle life than their larger particle equivalents. Among these are aerogel intercalation electron materials, nanocrystalline alloys, nano-sized composite materials, carbon nanotubes, and nano-sized transition metal oxides. More applications of the nanomaterials include the applications of nanomaterials as high sensitivity sensors كمتحسسات. Due to their high surface area and increased reactivity, nanomaterials could be employed as sensors for detecting various parameters such as electrical resistivity, chemical activity, magnetic permeability, thermal conductivity, and capacitance. Also, more applications include transportation and telecommunications. For example, in car tires, car bumpers. For car tires, nanoparticles of carbon black ranging between 10 to 500 nanometer act as a filler in the polymer matrix of tires and are used for mechanical reinforcement. For car bumpers, clay particle-based composites containing plastic and nano-sized clay are used to make car exterior that are lighter and twice as resistant to scratches than usual materials. For imaging, scanning microscope imaging, single-wall carbon nanotubes, or SWCNTS for short, have been used as a prop tip for atomic force microscopy imaging for antibodies, DNA, etc. Nanotubes are ideal prop tips for scanning microscopy due to their small diameter, which maximize the resolution, high aspect ratio, and stiffness. For molecular recognition IFM tips, single-wall carbon nanotubes with attached biomolecules are attached to AFM tips and used for molecular recognition in order to study chemical forces between molecules. More applications of the nanomaterials also include the biomedical applications. These include, for example, the nanoscaffolds, the antimicrobial nanopowders and coatings, in addition to bioseparations. nanoscaffolds بصورة عامة هي عبارة عن 3-dimensional polymer تستخدم للمساعدة في إعادة توليد بعض الأنسجة. So nanofiber scaffolds, these are 3-dimensional structure composed of polymer fibers, can be used to regenerate central nervous system cells and possible other organs. Experiments performed on a hamster with a severed optic tract demonstrated the regeneration of the axonal tissue initiated by a peptide nanofiber scaffolds. Antimicrobial nanopowders and coatings. هنا بعض النانوباودرز تكون مضادة لبعض أنواع البكتيريا والفيروسات. So certain nanopowders possess antimicrobial properties. When these powders contact cells of E. coli or other bacteria species and viruses, over 90% are killed within a few minutes. So due to their antimicrobial effect, nanoparticles of silver and titanium dioxide, these are less than 100 nanometer length scale, are assist as coatings for surgical masks. Bioseparations. أيضا بعض النانوتيوبز ممكن تستعمل لفصل بعض biological species. So nanotubes membrane can act as channels for highly selective transport of molecules and ions between solutions that are present on both sides of the membrane. For example, membranes containing nanotubes with inside diameter of molecular dimensions, this is for example less than 1 nanometer length scale, separate small molecules on the basis of molecular size. When nanotubes with larger inside diameter, this is for example 20 to 60 nanometer, can be used to separate proteins. More biomedical applications for the nanoparticles include, or nanomaterials in general, includes the drug delivery, nanocrystals as fluorescence, biological labels, and biofunctional devices based on magnetic nanoparticles. For drug delivery تشتغل قابليتها على النفوذ بسبب صغر حجمها حتى يرسل the drugs to a specific target. So the ability of nanoparticles to target and penetrate specific organs and cells contributes to their toxicity. However, this ability may be exploited in nanomedicine. Nanospheres composed of biodegradable polymers can be incorporated with drugs, allowing the timed release of the drug as the polymer degrades. When particles are said to degrade in acidic microenvironments such as tumor cells or round inflammation sites, this will allow for the site-specific or targeted drug delivery. Nanocrystals as fluorescence biological labels. هذه الإيمج توضح استخدام النانوكريستالز as fluorescence biological labels. Biofunctional devices based on magnetic nanoparticles. إذا هنا يتم استخدام أو الاعتماد على magnetic properties of the nanoparticles. Delivery and control release of therapeutics, bioswitches for organ functions, imaging, biocompatible magnetic nanocrystals with reactive moieties on the surface were generated by means of one-pot reaction are used directly in cancer detection by being coupled with a specific cancer targeting antibody. In addition, magnetic nanocrystals have potential applications in MRI. طبعا هذه الإيمج توضح كيف ممكن الاعتماد على المagnetic properties لمهاجمة the tumor cells in cancer. More applications of the nanomaterials include tissue engineering, so nano and microparticles including living animal cells, bacteria, and colloidal gold at 100 nanometer length scale can be optically guided and deposited in arbitrarily defined three-dimensional arrays using a process called laser-guided direct writing. Detection of chemical and biological wafer agents. One technique uses atomic force microscopy with a sandwich immunosphere attaching magnetic beads to a microfabricated cantilever sensitive to small displacements. هذه الإيمج توضح more applications of the nanomaterials, for example in biochips and for example in fixing damaged blood cells, and mechanical or artificial red blood cells, and in the near futures, humanoid shaped nanorobots. More applications of the nanomaterials include the applications of nanomaterials in cosmetics, مواد التجميل, coatings, الطلاء, self-cleaning windows, scratch resistant materials اللي تصير بها مقاومة للتخدشات, والtextiles اللي هي بالأنسجة. So for cosmetics, for example, titanium dioxide and zinc oxide become transparent to visible light when formed at the nanoscale level. However, they are able to absorb and reflect UV light. As such, we currently use in sunscreens and in cosmetics industry. For coatings, nanomaterials have been used for very thin coating for decades and centuries. Today, thin film coatings are used in a vast range of applications, include architectural glass, microelectronics, anti-counterfeit devices, هاي الديفايسز اللي تكشف التزوير, optoelectronic devices, and catalytic active surfaces. As such, structure coating with nanometer scale features in more than one dimension are expected to be an important fundamental technologies in the future. Self-cleaning windows. Self-cleaning windows that are coated with highly hydrophobic titanium dioxide nanoparticles can speed up, in the presence of water and sunlight, the breakdown of the dirt and bacteria, which can then be washed off the glass more easily. Scratch-resistant materials. Non-scale intermediate layers between the hard outer layer and the substrate material significantly improve wear and scratch-resistant coatings. The intermediate layers are designed to give a good bonding and degrade matching of the mechanical and thermal properties, leading to improved the adhesion. Textiles. Nanoparticles have already been used in coating textiles such as nylon to provide antimicrobial characteristics. Also, the control of porosity at the nanoscale and surface roughness in a variety of the polymers and inorganic materials led to ultra-hydrophobic waterproof. Another list of fields of applications are shown below, starting with power and energy. Dye-sensitized solar cells, for example using TiO2, hydrogen storage, for example using metal hydrides, improved anodes and cathode materials for solid oxide fuel cells, thermal control fluids, for example using CU, environmental catalysts, for example using ceria or CO2 as the diesel additive to improve combustion efficiency, automated catalytic converters, miniaturized varistors, for example doped zethanol, fuel cells catalysts, for example platinum and PEM cells, conducting polymers for bipolar plates in fuel cells, improved electrodes in batteries and supercapacitors, increased capacity and more rapid charging, increased efficiency of hydrogen generation from water or, for example, from solar, catalysts for gas-to-liquid technologies, cold gasification technologies, biodiesels, and other synthetic fuels. For healthcare and medical, targeted drug delivery, alternative drug and vaccine delivery mechanism, for example, inhalation, oral in place of injection, bone growth promoters, cancer treatments, biocompatible coating for implants, sunscreens, for example, using zethanol and TiO2, cosmetics, biolabeling and detection, for example, using AU, carriers for drugs with low water solubility, fungicides, for example, using zethanol, MRI, contrast agent, for example, using supermagnetic iron dioxide, new dental composites, biological binding agent, for example, for high phosphate levels, antiviral, antibacterial, for example, AG, anti-spore non-chemical creams, powders using surface tension energy on the nanoscale to destroy biological particles. For engineering, cutting tools bits, for example, TAC, TICCO, spark plugs, for example, using nanoscale metal and ceramic powders, chemical sensors, molecular sieves, wear resistance, abrasion resistant coating, for example, using aluminum, deuterium, ZR203, non-chlorine-first polymer composites, lubricants and sealants, hydraulic additives, for example, using CU, MOS2, pigment, self-cleaning glass, for example, using titanium dioxide, propellant, for example, using aluminum, structural and physical enhancement for polymers and composites, enhanced thermal spray coating techniques, for example, based on TiO2, TiCCO, inks, conducting, magnetic, etc. using metal powders, flame, resolving polymers formulations, rubber composites such as car tires, for example, using carbon black, Anti-scattering layers in photographic films. For consumer goods, barrier packaging using silicates, anti-counterfeit devices, ski wax, white goods, for example, anti-scratch, easy cleaning, cutting, etc. Glass coatings for anti-glare, anti-misting mirrors, for example, using titanium dioxide. Sports goods, tennis balls, rackets, for example, using nanoclouds. Water and stain repellent textiles. Pyrotechnics and explosives, for example, using aluminium. Additives in paints, for example, anti-bleaching effects, scratch resistance, etc. Tails coated, for example, anti-scratch using alumina. For environmental, water treatment, photocatalyst treatment, for example, using titanium dioxide. Self-cleaning glass, for example, using titanium dioxide based on structures coating. Anti-reflection coatings. Soil remediation, for example, using Fe. Controlled delivery of herbicides and pesticides. Anti-fouling coatings to reduce chemical use. For electronics, nanoscale magnetic particles for high-density data storage. EMI shielding using conducting and magnetic materials. Electronic circuits, for example, using copper or aluminium. Display technologies including field emission devices, for example, using conducting oxide. Ferrofluids, for example, using magnetic materials. Optoelectronic devices such as switches, conductive coatings and fabrics. Chemical mechanical plonization, CMP example, using alumina, silica, ceria. Coating and joining materials for optical fibers, for example, based on silicon. Solar cell similar requirements to both coating and catalyst applications. Improved electrode similar to catalyst applications. Antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal similar to the catalyst applications. Sensors similar to medical applications, steric size and morphology. Pigments, inks similar to coatings. Propellants, explosives similar to catalyst. Data storage media similar to coatings.